Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Okay. So what's the first question?
Okay, so let's start with
Go to
this one because Maria's here. So.
yeah, both astrology and I want to link astrology and past lives together. So there are two questions about one is about astrology, one is about past lives and their legitimacy and their effect and their value.
Right. Talk about a little about reincarnation.
Okay, let's start with that. Look, if we all come from a Judeo-Christian background, so reincarnation is all over the text.
Hmm.
If we didn't know anything about the Bible or have any kind of spiritual understanding, we all understand, and if you don't, please raise your hand. We all understand that we're all souls going through a human experience. So, in other words, we're a physical silhouette of the soul's intent, meaning it's not behind me, it's another body that's inside here. And it has every single memory, every single nuance, and every single scenario or thought that I've ever been through. And really, that's what allows me to be able to do the work that I do. I don't know, for those of you that don't know, I started my practice in 1998 as a psychic medium. I didn't do healing. I really understood that I had an experience where I was walking in Manhattan on 86th Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue. I got some money from an ATM machine. When I turned around, everyone's dead relatives were talking to me. And I thought, the cheese has finally slid off my cracker. And I was going to end up in a facility, drooling out of the side of my mouth, looking out the window. And it didn't happen. So I said, well, why me? They said, well, because you're unafraid. I said, okay, well, that doesn't really make any sense. So I went home. I sat home and received information for 3 weeks, nonstop. And my eyes were tearing because I thought it was that my eyes that saw whatever I was receiving. And really, I was downloading information into my soul. That means the soul exists and lives simultaneously with the physical body. The physical body is just an expression of the soul. So you would say, oh, well, as my dear uncle would like to say, they were teaching me. They were not. I was just, my soul had an opportunity to gather itself and it aligned itself to a reality where I'm able to receive. So in 21 days, I downloaded information about how to look forward, how to look back, how to look at your liver, how to look at your spine, how to align myself to what you said, everything all at the same time. I drank water and ate yogurt for 3 weeks in a one-bedroom apartment on 90th Street in Manhattan. And then I thought it was interesting I wanted to go and get on the train in New York City. And I would get on trains and stand by the door and look like a half psycho and look at people, stare at them to see what's going on in their lives. And, some people were uneasy. And at some point, it started to drain me because I was peering into people's lives inappropriately. I didn't ask their permission, and my interests weren't for myself. They were for the sake of power, not for the power of love, but for the love of power. So my uncle, the ever famous Peter Resnick, came to my house and said, listen, if it was intended for you to be in that world, you would be, but you're here. So you need to get back to this reality. And it really just, as if somebody snapped their fingers, it snapped me out of it. I'm telling you this as a backstory for I clearly understand, not because I read it in a book, I clearly understand how the soul reality works and how it interacts and what it has to do with our lives. Which means I really decided to, because I had no one to ask, I decided to learn about it in detail so that no one can tell me, I used to pride myself on the fact that I was a concrete medium, that I can talk to people from the other side. It really is not an achievement. It's, I think Nora Lily can do it standing on her head if she tried. But, people aggrandize, I'm going to see a medium. They're teaching me how to live. It's meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. So I'm starting with this because I want you to understand something. If you accept that you're a soul going through a human experience, then of course you have every nuance and every memory, everything that you've ever experienced from your past existence or existences, plural. Everything. What you were, how you spoke, if you were a guy or a girl. In fact, I want to comment on this. I know people might think that I bring the wokeness into it because I'm making fun, but I want you to I want to bring something to your attention. I have a dear relative, which will remain unnamed. He would get on the train and say, he's a very handsome, very big young man, and he would get on the train and say, he would call me and say, listen, I think I have a female organ, and all the men are looking at me because they want me. That's a phenomenon. And it's a phenomenon for these folks that think they're gender fluid also. The phenomenon is that they didn't develop themselves in this life emotionally sturdy. They don't have emotional stamina and strength. So the power of their last existence overpowers who they are in this one.
Could it be that there was no closure in between their previous life and this life? There was some sort of disconnect where the soul didn't get to do the full transition, and so it comes into this new human experience slightly confused or slightly.
So you could say that I think the original question of whoever asked about past lives was, the intention is always, well, maybe I am who I am because of my past life. You are not. Because if you were a guy and now you're a girl, you're intended to be a girl. And so you can have those qualities manifest and you can feel them, and you can maybe feel more masculine and more aggressive and have a slightly more testosterone. But it's intended for you to find a balance. That's why you entered the human experience in this new way. So a lot of these folks are lost because they don't have an allegiance to a way or an observance or a way to fuel their souls, which then the soul fuels the individual. So if the soul is still attached or is living out its past existence through the new body, it's because it doesn't have a relationship with the creator. Because once it has a relationship and the new body finds a relationship, it resolves who it is because it's now defined by the soul, not by the confusion of the old existence. Is that clear?
Would you say that a lot of people could benefit from maybe doing past life regressions? Or of course it might not be the ideal thing to do, because if we're in this human experience, we're to deal with whatever we're dealing in this experience. But a lot of people look for past life regressions to resolve this or resolve that.
I've done sessions and treatments. I think I mentioned to you in one of the last classes, I treated my doula's kid for severe asthma. And in the memory of the soul, this kid would have asthma attacks and they have to take her to the hospital every Friday, like clockwork. And when I treated her, I saw that the kid had drowned in a past existence. Now you'd say, why would it carry the memory into this existence? Because not being able to, why can't people breathe? Because they don't have a way to resolve their emotions. We hold our breath when we're either angry, frustrated, or consumed by the future, right? So then in its past existence, this soul drowned. What is water? It's emotion. 72% of the world's land is water. 72%, 65 or 68% of the body is water. So it drowned because it was consumed by its emotions, and now it re-enters the human experience into a family that doesn't have a sense of direction. You would say, well, why is that? Because it needs to find its own direction.
So this soul wasn't able to resolve in the past life. So it comes again into this life.
It re-enters the human experience into a reality, and it chooses parents where once again it needs to find its path.
So we continue the resolve
Absolutely. Always.
Is this the same kid who would listen to a DVD, an audio instructional DVD on how not to drown?
The father, after I treated the little girl a couple of times, the father came to the speakerphone and said, Vlad, I got to tell you something. He said, I want you to know that my little girl was listening to an instructional CD called Little Ducky every day, over and over again. After you treated her for the second or third time, she just stopped. That means the physical body aligned itself to a memory of drowning, being consumed. And now that I've treated her, it's not as if my treatment healed her. It's that I realigned her soul and reconnected it to the Creator. And now it has a potential to resolving its path or finding its path. But in the process of the connection, what got resolved is the attachment to being overwhelmed by emotion. And nobody knows her, but the mother was a heavy pot smoker, a weed smoker. The father also had no direction. They had no religion in the house, no spirituality, no connection at all. So this soul re-entered the human experience into an environment where it needs to find its way. How does it find its way? Through a physical challenge, through a health issue that's truly a guideline. Makes sense?
So we make arrangements as souls based on whatever we need to correct on our following life or our next life experience. We make arrangements of how we need the environment to be and the circumstances so we can overcome whatever it is that we're coming to work on as souls.
Right. So the soul chooses its environment. By the way, Nikki said before, she mentioned doing past life regression. It's a lot of fun, but you're not to be attached to it. I mean, it's hilarious. I did it. I had a guy who was a young medium from Brooklyn. He was talented, and I asked him, he specialized in past life regressions. He trained for it, and I trusted him because he was a real dude. So actually, my ex-wife was present while he did it, and it was pretty wild. I mean, I saw myself in Chicago. I named streets in Chicago. I had never been to Chicago. I saw myself in France and Rome, and I lived in Rome during Augustus. And then in this life, I lived in Rome when I was 10 years old and spoke Italian as if it was my language. So I relived it, kind of. But I can tell you that for those of you that are attached to the phenomenon, it's a complete waste of time.
Could it be helpful?
I mean, helpful in what sense?
Maybe some people, let's say this little girl was very specific. She didn't do a past life regression, but that memory was able to be healed or disconnected.
I'd like to make it clear that if you're sick and suffering and miserable, your past life didn't make you that way. You made a choice to be miserable.
I have a question.
Please.
So, if let's say a child drowns, are they consumed with emotion as a child, or is it because of the family they came into, or is it because of their past life? So, like, what exactly is the reason if they're a child when that happens?
The soul in its last existence drowned as a young woman. The soul moved on into a new body of a little girl who was born into a family that has no emotional stamina, direction, or any kind of spiritual direction. which means it could potentially, through asthma, once again, can't breathe. So it carries the memory into the new existence of the inability to breathe freely.
So this soul specifically came in this experience or continues the need to overcome being overwhelmed by emotion. Yes?
Yes. You get that, Bruce? So it's not the new kid, it's the old one.
Yeah, but you just said whatever, even if we bring stuff from other
You
lives,
still have a choice.
that means it's still unresolved from other lives,
look,
and we come to resolve it here.
What's interesting is that this kid was 6 years old, and the way it manifested in her being asthmatic, it manifested for a number of reasons. Also for the parents, because of the hardship to find their path as well. They found me as a result. I'm not their savior, but I introduced them to the idea that their child has asthma as a result of their inability to give her an emotional toolbox, so to speak.
So as much as it's an individual correction for this child, it's also a correction for the parents.
Absolutely. Any miscarriage, any abortion, any loss, any sickness that the child has is 180% for the sake of the parent as well. If the parent gets to see itself in the purest form. So if your child has the attention span of a flea and can't pay attention, so it's because you're unwilling to focus and you can't create order. It's not the kid. If you create order, then you dictate the order in the house, and they don't get to do what they want. I'm not. My ex-wife raised phenomenal children. I wasn't there every day, but I did play a huge part. They're fantastic kids. But she always said, "Well, they'll choose the religion they want to be. They won't, because if you give a kid a menu, he's going to order dessert." Right? They don't know shit. They don't know anything, excuse me. They want to order, they want to do what they want to do. But if you set a standard in the house and they know, they develop a sense of urgency and they develop a sense of order and they understand that everybody's a soul and they're raised in that environment, that they don't become empty shells and you don't have to contain them later on in life and try to impose something on them. And that's their issue, one of the issues of this new generation that doesn't have a sense of direction and they don't stand for anything. When you don't stand for anything, you fall for nothing. So does it have value? Yes, I did it. It's tons of fun. There's a guy named Brian Weiss who wrote a book, Many Lives, Many Masters. He wrote a book called Only Love is Real. He wrote a bunch of books, but those three that I like, Messages from the Masters. He's a Miami guy who was a psychiatrist. He was actually a heart surgeon. And his kid, interestingly enough, speaking about past lives, his kid was born with a chicken heart. It was turned in the opposite direction. And he was a heart surgeon. And he couldn't save his kid. And the kid died. And so he went on to get a degree as a psychiatrist. And he started helping nurses in the hospital with hypnosis. And one of the nurses that he hypnotized started speaking to him in a male's voice, like a master soul. And he received messages from them. It's pretty interesting. He's, it's very short-lived. It's kind of it's definitely for spiritual materialists, if you like that kind of thing. It's stimulating and interesting, but I wouldn't get hung up on it because ultimately my answer to that question is you're in this life not by chance, and it's not by chance you're a woman or a man. It's not by chance you have the kids that you have and the husband that you met, because they're all expressions of you. Nobody is a mistake. The Creator doesn't make mistakes. We do. And even if you chose a person that you're not happy with, it's because you're not happy with yourself. Get happy with yourself, and then your your view of reality will expand, and you'll start to see the value in the person that you're with. Or not, and just leave.
So we could say you can definitely find value in doing past life regressions. Reincarnation is definitely real.
Definitely, no question.
But is not the answer to problems.
It is not.
Or to solving an
It is
issue.
not. It is not.
It could help sometimes, but not necessarily the way that it should be approached.
Somehow, I don't know, this is a personal piece of information. Somehow, I saw myself in France in my past life regression. And the guy says, why don't you look into the people that you see? You see some people, why don't you look in their eyes, see if you recognize them? I don't know how this makes sense, but I lived in France and I fell in love with a hooker. And I looked in her eyes and she's my mother now. How that makes sense, I have no idea. He told me, look in her eyes and see if you know her.
Because we're surrounded by the same group of souls.
Right.
And
yeah, but she's we have a 19-year difference. Is it possible? It was in the 1700s, so yes, it's possible. Did we go through the same lifetime together? But it's very interesting that I saw her this way because I committed in that life. I took my own life because she wouldn't give me her love. I had the same issue with her today. So now she became my mother, so she can give me unconditional love. So believe it or not. You know what I mean? Well, I don't know what to tell you. But astrology, should we go into astrology?
into astrology and link astrology, the Bible.
Definitely. So for those of you that are confused, let's start with the biggest deception of humanity. Jesus was a Pisces. He wasn't born in December. He was an extraordinary human being who was so connected to water that he was mutable. He understood the power of deliberate intent. He understood how to turn water into wine. That's possible for all of us. That's what he taught. If you read Ernest Holmes, if you listen to, what's my boy's name? Neville?
Neville Goddard.
Have you heard of Neville Goddard? He's also a Jesus lover. And what's his name? Paramahansa Yogananda Paramahansa. It's about Christ consciousness. That's all he taught Yeshua. He taught the power of deliberate intent, and he didn't teach to deviate from observance, because in order to make things real and in order to be an effective co-creator of your reality, you are God. God is in you. And so that means you can effectively co-create your own reality. Of course, there are challenges. Of course, there are obstacles, but those obstacles are based on your intellectual perception and your understanding.
But he also taught to stay within the confines of the teachings of the original Bible.
He told his disciples not to deviate from what Moses brought down. So,
one question. You said Jesus was Pisces?
Yeah.
But if he's born in December...
He wasn't born in December. He was born in March.
In March.
December is a what do they call it? Pagan interpretation.
Okay, because we celebrate the birth of Christ on December, so it would be a Capricorn, but he's a Pisces. So
couldn't possibly. Capricorns are a pain in the ass. You can't get along with them. And all they want to do is destroy shit. Capricorns are, they're extremely reliable, extremely methodical. They're great friends. They are very business oriented. You can't sway them. You have to be so concrete for them to believe in what you're saying, because they look at every little nuance of what you say. They'll pick you apart bone by bone. So if you don't have something solid to present to them, that's it. They'll discredit you and run away. But he couldn't possibly have been a Capricorn. He was definitely a water sign. That's why everything is associated with fish. And so he actually, according to some Ayurvedic astrologers, apparently he had seven 7 signs in Pisces, 7 planets in one sign. It's unheard of. Buddha had 7 planets in Taurus, and some other folks also have some interesting signs. But astrology is totally legit. The stars above us definitely play a role in our lives.
Well, the stories of the Bible tell how Abraham, originally, who was the precursor of all the religions, or most of the religions, all the Abrahamic religions, he followed astrology.
He was a master astrologer. But he said, for the Jews, there's a world beyond the stars. What does that mean? That means for those who accept that there's a creative force and there's only one force, a monotheistic understanding, that there's only one creative force that sustains this experience that you and I are going through. If there is one force, then astrology can only affect you when you're disconnected. Because if every time I sat home, Mercury was in retrograde, I couldn't get anything done.
But you can totally use astrology as a science and as a guide, but it doesn't have to define who you are.
You could say, I'm a Pisces, right? You can't rely on Pisces to, I don't know, buy toilet paper, for God's sake. They live in the ethers. They can't get anything done. They plan well, but they can't execute. They're wishy-washy, unreliable. They're not strong. I can't subscribe to it. I have 7 planets in Aries. I'm more of an Aries than a Pisces, which means I'm not going to be defined by the sign, because then I'm doomed. Because if that's what defines me, then I'm defined by the structure of the stars. I'm not defined by my relationship with the Creator. So instead of being defined by your astrological constellations, when you create a relationship with the creative force and you have a devotional life through which you connect, then you're not confined to live within the confines of astrological limitations.
Right, because if we allow astrology to define us, then it's no different than idolatry.
It's definitely yes.
My question went on this path because about, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years ago, I don't remember exactly, I went to a monastery and I talked with the chief monk. I don't know how to call it in English, but was the most important priest in that monastery. And I had this talk with him. And he was very rude, I could say, and very vocal when he asked. He didn't even ask me. He mentioned astrology, and he said it's a sin, and you don't have to do that. And I was like, I wasn't that ready at that point to argue with him, but I was shocked about his reaction, and I remember never ever did I went there again, because if one man can be so aggressive on a topic, in my opinion, can't be a good monk, priest, whatever. And years after, okay, so I left with that idea that the church denies astrology and considers it to be a sin. That was the idea that I left with. And years fast forward, yeah, I started thinking about my own reasoning, yeah, and I said, okay, so we have the 3 wise men. They followed the stars, so they were the first ones to recognize Jesus. So now you're telling me the church is telling that this is a sin, but it's in the Bible, the one main thing. And after that, going further and further and seeing that the Bible has lots of references to astrology, to stars, to planets, and okay, why is that even considered a sin? Because it's a science, and it's been there for thousands of years. And pharaohs and all kind of kings um, approached this and used this kind of science. And that's where I placed my question to you, because I mean, I don't know where did that idea came from.
The idea comes
From
from complete.
that it's a sin. I mean,
The
it's stupid.
idea of sin comes from the understanding, basic understanding. If it's not God, anything, thou shalt not have any God before me, the second commandment. So the moment you say that even a diagnosis, as you and I both know, Marus, that a diagnosis, the moment it defines you, you're now in violation of the commandment. You're now defined by something other than your relationship with the Creator. So astrology is a brilliant science. It's not just a science, it's a reality that exists here with us, and it definitely moves currents. More people are born on a full moon, more crime is committed on a full moon, more people go into hospitals and have accidents. Why? Because the moon moves currents in the ocean, right? We're 68% water. So then it moves our water. We're emotionally disturbed on a full moon. The full moon is the light in the darkness, which means the full moon brings out our personal darkness so we can see it and work on it. But as long as we insinuate that, you know what? I don't really have a great attention to detail because I'm a Pisces. That's it. You're no longer. You've now surrendered. You verbally surrendered into living within the confines of astrology.
Like you have no free will and no.
Right. I'm this, and that's all I'm ever going to be.
So
I'm going to ask you, please, because I hear your noises when you're not speaking, to mute yourself.
Everybody's.
Yeah. So okay. Next.
If what we encounter is what we create, then when we encounter someone we do not like, for instance, someone toxic, we should address this toxicity that we have inside. So
This
meaning,
is a question, but
right. So this person is saying if we encounter someone who's toxic, that means that we have toxic inside of us. So we need to address that. So the question says, but when is it that we should separate from that person? Because if we encounter things that we don't like, toxicity or aggression or whatever it is, and then we constantly separate because we don't want that, then we'll end up alone. So the question is, at one point do we separate?
Where do you draw the line?
Right.
So just so we're clear, I call him Yeshua, for those of you that call him Jesus, both in the Judaic, in the Torah, and in according to Yeshua, love thy brother as thyself. Why? Because he is you. That's number one. Number two, Yeshua said, turn the other cheek. Why? If you smack me, I'm going to smack you back. I'm obligated to smack you back. But if you come to me with aggression, that means there is aggression in me, and I'm encountering what it is that I need to recognize about me. So you can't go through life saying, oh, they're toxic, I'm going to separate myself. So you really literally end up alone because no one's good enough. And you're so busy using your intuition to discover people's wrongdoings or their shortcomings, you can never see the best of them. So you constantly encounter toxicity because everybody's screwed up.
Yeah,
Everyone.
but if you encounter toxicity, it's an opportunity for you to address whatever it is that you're seeing
that you're recognizing,
because it's forming itself in front of you, so you can physically see it about yourself.
Right. But the other part of the question is that whether should you continue to stay in that, let's say it's a marriage relationship. Well, I can tell you from personal experience from my practice that as an individual changes, it's inevitable that the person in front of them experiences the change. And they either recognize it and embrace it, or they fall off.
So as you change, as you make the changes, internal changes, you recognize, you're understanding, you go through the process, your reality changes, meaning the people who are around you start to change, perhaps even your physical reality, what you see, your house, perhaps you move from the inner city maybe to a coastal city or whatever the case may be. But as you change, your physical reality changes, and your physical reality includes the people around you, your family members, your spouse, your kids, your dogs.
Well, I think this question was asked possibly by someone who's in a marriage where they may or may not want to be. But I have to tell you, if you're making, Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world, right?
So the second part of the question, which I believe is a different concept.
So then, if you are changing and the person that you're with is not changing or not making adjustments to accommodate your personal awareness and your spiritual or emotional growth, and they're staying in the same place, then you are responsible for violating another commandment, stealing. It says, thou shalt not steal. I can take your sneakers or your glasses. They're replaceable. But if I steal your time and I continue to dwell in the relationship where I clearly know nothing is happening and it's just become an arrangement, I'm stealing my own time, more importantly, the other person's, because they're under the impression that they're in the right place. And you are really not ever present, because in your mind's eye, you'd rather be somewhere else. That's why it says, thou shalt not steal.
So you're saying, even if I do the work and I'm expecting my reality to change, perhaps the change is not what I want it to be. And if the other significant other or is not making the moves and is not changing along and growing along with me or keeping up, then you need to decide when to draw the line and say, I can't be here anymore.
Well, where's your value? If you value yourself, the best thing my parents did for me was get divorced.
Right. So you say, if you don't like where you are.
Listen, I'm not inspiring people to get divorced, by no means. You don't have to make it work, but you have to be willing to be with someone who's lives at your pace. Meaning, I'm not marrying someone for who they're going to become. If that's the case, I'm in the wrong place.
But a lot of times it happens that you are delusional and you think you are a certain pace and the other person is not. And the truth is that other person is you.
Right. So if you recognize that you're always in the right place 100% of the time, for those of you that want to read about that, John Kabat-Zinn wrote a book called Wherever You Go, There You Are. Right? It's about being 100% of the time exactly where you're supposed to be, and embracing that fact that if you were supposed to be somewhere else, you would be, but you're not. You're where you are. So once you embrace that you're here, then you have no one to blame. You can't say, well, I'm here because they're not moving forward and they're not getting up at 5:15 in the morning to do whatever it is that I'm doing. If it's so important to you, get up and do it. Set the standard. And eventually you raise your vibration to a point where there's no common denominator. That's why we started this class, because there are tons of people out there that, regardless of their religion, especially married folks that are looking to be married or being in a relationship, they marry for the wrong reasons. They don't have a common denominator. A common denominator is not the music you listen to or the town you come from. It has to be your internal belief system, because your belief system is what creates your experience. My ex came from a prominent home, but she was consumed by what's going to be, and it was never enough for her. We lived on a $50 million resort property, and she thought, we have to own our house. I said, well, you are where you are. Just enjoy where you are. Why do you have to be somewhere else? Just be where you are. No, she always had to be in the next thing. It's a Capricorn trait, by the way. They judge themselves so harshly, they always need to be somewhere else. But the truth is, they are 100% exactly where they're supposed to be. Not just Capricorn, Sagittarius as well. The two biggest.
So you hit us both, me and my husband.
Best. But look, if Capricorn and Sagittarians get together, they can break each other's balls. Look, they're perfect for each other.
I was going to say,
broke some
easy with the
bones.
Sagittarius. I'm Sagittarius.
I know you are. Why do you think I'm saying it? I know you are. I see you.
I was like, is he trying to like throw me under the bus right now?
I'm throwing daggers, kid. Don't worry. We'll get you. We'll get to you. Look, I don't want to define anybody by their sign because we just addressed all of that. But please understand that your common denominator is not the sign that you are. Your common denominator and what makes you compatible as a couple is that you don't constantly, as they say in New York City, put shit in the game. Meaning, if my 2 months are slow, she's not telling me to go get a job at Whole Foods because we're going to be broke and be living in the street. No, she's inspired, and so she prays and supports me when it's all of a sudden slow. It's a time to work on ourselves. That's the life we live. And the biggest issue in marriages, one is financial, right? So if you don't have the same pace, you can't be together. If you're always living in worst case scenario, which I lived with a Capricorn, always worst case scenario, always waiting for the other shoe to drop, always somewhere else. I'd say, look, we are fine. Look where you live. It's never enough. Sagittarians and Capricorns that have God in their lives and have a ritual life are the most extraordinary, intuitive people because they see things for exactly what they are. They're not about contrived falsehoods. They're severely intuitive. And what happens to them is if they don't have a ritual life through which they immerse themselves in godliness and energy, they rely on their intellectual perception and they calculate all the time and they have to set the record straight. So they look for flaws in everything and everyone. And of course, sabotage everything. They can't help themselves.
There's a story in the Bible that talks about Abraham. His name was Abraham. And an astrologer told him that he would never have kids. And it came to a point where God spoke to him and he pulled him out of his tent and told him that to look at the stars and that he was going to have his offspring were going to be as numerous as the stars. And he said, well, how can this be if I was told based on my astrology that I will never have kids? And God told him that he was missing a link. So he added a letter to his name and he was no longer Abraham, but Abraham now. And he ended up having all of us. But
so what's the link? What does it mean he pulled him out of? God came down and pulled him out of his tent? It sounds like a fairy tale. No, he pulled him out of his confined environment. What does it mean he added a link? He introduced him to having God in his life, which gave him a broader view of reality, and his offsprings became as many as the stars. That's what it means. It doesn't mean that the guy in the sky came down and told him to come out of his tent. What is a tent? It's a confined way of looking at reality. It's an environment that has walls and boundaries. By reconnecting to the creative force and fueling his own soul, he became Avraham, which means the leader of all of our nations. He introduced us to this way of being, what you and I are discussing, and us. Where this is the whole goal of having this class, of creating a common denominator so that all of you, whether you're in a relationship or not, that you find a common denominator, that what you choose in your lives, so what you choose to engage with others is your common understanding, not the town you come from. Because if we don't understand, Maros, we from day one, we're on the same page. Why? Because this is how you've always thought. You just needed somebody to confirm it. So I entered your life because you were ready for that, right? I just introduced you to what you already knew to be true. I just had a concrete system through which I introduced it to. And so all of a sudden, all of everything that you ever known or believed to be true, it was already in you. I just confirmed it. You understand? So now you took it and you ran with it and you make it work for yourself. When you make it work for yourself, all of a sudden your reality changes and expresses itself in a way that confirms to you what you believe to be true. Your belief is creating your experience, not vice versa.
So, I mean, naturally, we constantly get hung up on little things, whether it's astrology, whether it's work, whether it's a family member, a mother-in-law, whatever it is. We constantly get hung up on these things that in the moment define us. So
Wait, my mother-in-law defines me?
Maybe it's your sign. Maybe it's whatever it is for you.
She definitely.
But what tool could we use in the moment to kind of break from that moment of idolatry towards whatever it is that's holding us, and break through and say, wait, it's not true. There's a power.
It's got to be the biggest achievement.
There's a higher connection
for human beings to overcome their own personal story and their conditioned view of reality. He's going to say this. No, he's not. He's going to say what you choose him to say. Why? Because that's your power of deliberate intent and the power of your perception. But in order to make that happen, all these wellness books, you can throw them in the trash, because all they do is give you tricks how to squint your eyes and close your eyes and imagine yourself there. If you don't have a relationship with that part of yourself, that is the creative part, meaning the soul, if you don't have a daily relationship through which you feed your soul, none of these wellness tricks works. These hacks are for nothing. They don't mean anything. You could close your eyes all you want. You can imagine being a billionaire all you want. It doesn't mean anything. Why? Because in order for that to work, the spark, your field you have to be more soul than body. If you're a physical body and a combination of condensed cells, you can't make anything happen. You can't pursue a new endeavor. You don't have enough energy. It's your energy that fuels your stage. It's your soul's connection to the creator that fuels your new endeavors. Nothing will happen for you if you don't create a personal relationship with God. Especially if you want to meet someone. People say, oh, I don't know if I should go to bars or I should go to bowling alleys. What does that have to do with anything? Who are you going to encounter in these places? No one. If you want to meet a torso, then you go to a bar, who's numbing themselves because they can't deal with reality. If you want to meet a soulmate, then you need to go to a place where you fuel your soul, and then the light of your soul will encounter another energy that vibrates to the same frequency, and then you can have a life together. Because if you don't have the same, not faith, religion, if you don't have the same faith in the highest possibility, then you create conflict. You marry into conflict. Because I believe in unlimited possibility. For 26 years, I don't have an ad. People come here because they heard. That's it. There's no business card. My website's from the Flintstone era, if it even exists. It doesn't, I don't have anything. My Instagram is maybe only a year or 2 years old because my brother-in-law started recording videos, and they're kind of half-assed too. Not that he did a bad job. But my point is, it's not a question of how many followers you have. We're not here to create followers. We're here to create leaders. Because if you set a standard for your family and your children in the way you observe and your ritual life, then you become the standard, and you are not a follower, you're a leader, and you engage your children in becoming leaders. And then they don't follow nonsense, and they don't want to paint their hair blue or become fluid, what do they call them? Gender fluid.
No, but it definitely takes work, but it's worth it because you take charge of your life. And then you teach that to your children and those around you.
If it becomes important. It only becomes important when you recognize that you're consistently affecting reality. Your mother-in-law can't be your nemesis because she's probably from another era. Her views of reality are skewed by her nonsense and the smallness of her life. And she wants to now impose her views on you. And if you're a guy crying to your mommy all the time, then there's a problem because you can't set a standard. Your standard is set by someone who lived in, 2 decades prior. Their life was different. Their circumstances were different.
You can also address a situation by taking a different approach and a different perspective. First of all, they're wanting to give you guidance out of love and understand that they have different tools. They had a completely different life. It was a different reality, whatever generation they're from. It applies to everybody, no matter what. But it doesn't have to be a negative thing. I think this links to the idea of free will. We don't have to get upset because, oh, my mother-in-law got me in a bad mood because she was in a bad mood. She was in a bad mood. That has nothing to do with me. I choose to either get upset or I choose to allow her to affect me if I choose to do so. And we constantly have that choice to allow others to affect us or not, or get upset because of this or because of not. Vlad he teaches this, but life is meaningless until you give it meaning. And if you really look at how deep that goes, life doesn't have to, the things that happen in life, they don't have to mean anything unless you choose to. Somebody says something to you, it's your choice. It's up to you to allow them.
I can't tell you how many men I know that are doing life in prison because they gave something meaning.
Oh, well, that's
in the moment.
It's an extreme, but
it is an extreme. But if you think about it, if you can give something meaning in the moment, you can destroy everything. And then you walk away and you have some time to think about it. And you say, oh my God, it's so stupid and so mediocre. It's such a waste of time contemplating nuance, what they said, what I should have said, what I could have said, what I would have said, and how much room this takes up in your head and your heart. Which means now, not only are you in violation of a commandment, this is what it means to be observant. If you're taking up space in your heart and in your head, you don't have a relationship with God. You have a relationship with those people who you're having a dialogue with in your head. So there is no room for God. You're in that play-by-play with your sister, your mother, your brother, your uncle, or whoever you have a problem with.
He said, she said, I should have said, I'm going to say next time I see them, it should have been like this, it should have been like that. And we get stuck in the loop.
And so what it does, it wears down the size of your soul. If your soul came as an extraordinary light and you have extraordinary perception or you're extremely intuitive or extremely sensitive, that's a huge asset. But you wear it down by having your internal dialogues, really being in violation of the second commandment. You make everyone God, and therefore you disconnect yourself from the creator and you stop the flow. And then when there's no flow, now you're redirecting the flow that's intended for your soul into the people that you're having a dialogue with. So they really do become your God. Now they have control over you. Oh, she ruined my life. She ruined nothing. You let her. You did that. You made her powerful. I had an experience where I was meditating and I was having a problem with my ex-wife. I found out that she was moving the kids from New Jersey to Buffalo, of course, to make my life difficult. And I went into this incredible ball of light, and where there were pins connected to every single part of my body. I was completely surrounded by this. I was inside of this light, and I had all these pins of light attached to my body parts. And it explained to me that I made her powerful. I gave her that power over me because I still loved her. And so, because I loved her, she could text me tomorrow. That's it. I gave meaning to tomorrow, and tomorrow meant that I had to write a novel back and that I would get consumed. And I gave all of that energy that I was receiving from the creator, which I spent hours cultivating, into her. And so she became powerful. She was able to affect my life by moving to places that were inaccessible to me to make it more difficult for me to see my kids. I gave her that power. When I finally, somebody brought it to my attention, they said, you get consumed by texting her back. Number one, because you're unresolved. Number two, because you still love her. It was true. When I wrote her a letter, one second, Manos. When I wrote her a letter accepting, this is a way to correct your issue if you have one of those people in your life. I wrote her a letter accepting responsibility that during our marriage, she was a lot more mature, that I was reactive and self-absorbed and slightly delusional because of all my talents and the fact that we were supported by a billionaire and we lived in this extraordinary place. And that I was everything that I accused her of being. I was worst case scenario. I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was always looking for conflict. Should we stay together? No, we couldn't have been together. But she was totally appropriate for me for where I was at the time. I moved forward and she didn't. So did I remove myself on time? We separately and respectively did a phenomenal job with our children. They were incredible, my kids. And I give her a ton of credit. And I don't need to forgive her. I need to take myself out of her mind and out of her heart so she stops contemplating what she could have and would have said to me. Had I ever accepted responsibility for my behavior during the marriage. Yes, Maros. What are you going to say?
While you are speaking, what I received from that was that she took the kids away from you in order to make your life difficult. But the kids are our purest expression of ourselves, right? So she took your expression away from you in order for you not to find yourself, because you had to find yourself in reality. She did that in order for you to find yourself, to learn how to love yourself, basically.
For sure.
It's one of my lessons too, and through your story, I understand this for me as well.
I don't
But
I don't blame her for anything. I mean, she did a really good job. But when the kids call and they have an issue, Luella called me recently. She has an internship with the Department of Defense, and she called me for some resolve to recognize that people that work for the Department of Defense are just working class, simple folks that don't really want to do anything. And the government has these huge budgets that are for nothing. They sit around, do nothing. She said, I spent 3 months in an internship. I didn't learn anything because they're not doing anything. I said, so what does that tell you? She said, well, I definitely am not a Democrat and I'm not a socialist. I'm for sure a capitalist. I want to move forward. I want to achieve something. I don't want to work somewhere and look forward to an extra week of vacation that somebody's going to allocate for you. I said, have you called your mother about this? She said, no, why would I call mom? She doesn't have solutions. It's not because she's simple. She just doesn't have emotional solutions. And so what you're saying is true. The fact that she took them from me, it also gave them an opportunity to grow themselves. And it's actually an astrologer, I asked an astrologer once, I said, how come Theo and I love each other so much? We're so close, yet I wasn't in his life every day. He said, Vlad, Theodore is Superman, and you're Superman. So he couldn't be Superman if you were in his life. Now he gets to be Superman, and he gets to have you, and he gets to come to you because he sees the value in what you offer. You're not constantly on him. So she did me a favor, actually, by moving that. I had to work hard for myself, which got me out of my own personal slavery to my thoughts and whatever issues I had. And I had to work hard in order to see my children. Anything else? Anybody else? Going once?
So bottom line, no matter what happens, it's always going to benefit you.
Always.
No matter what.
Always.
Even if it's the hardest time, even if it's the most difficult, even if it's a tragedy, it will always benefit you.
I talked to people who were in Turkey during the terrorist attack. They came to the platform 20 minutes after the explosion. They were late because they missed the bus. Jen and I were the first explosion. We were supposed to go, or she was supposed to go somewhere in the World Trade Center. And there was an explosion. Somebody planted a van underneath the World Trade Center. Either she went to Manhattan or something happened. I think it might have been either Jen or Lynn. She had a meeting. Lynn had a meeting in the American Express building, World Trade Tower 1. And she didn't wake up. She missed the meeting on the day that the towers fell. I had an office across the street from the towers. I ran my practice out of a chiropractor's office, Pete Goldman. And it was directly across the street from Tower 1. I knew 40 people at least, that didn't wake up, missed their bus, decided not to go into work on September 11th. Nothing is by chance. There was something about 1993 Pride. I can't remember what it was. Regardless.
So everything has a divine orchestration, or is by divine orchestration. And
By divine design. No?
yeah. So we shouldn't worry so much as we do, because it doesn't serve us.
Worry, as they say, is for fools. Because you're worried about something that hasn't happened, which takes you away from what's happening. So you're not in what's happening or in not what's going to happen. Then you're contributing to what you're worrying about. So it's really not what you want.
So you're really you're giving all your energy to what the worry is about. So you're actually feeling what you don't want. So we don't need to worry.
Any questions?
It's been a beautiful discussion
Thank you.
until now. So,
Nico, you got a question?
Beautiful.
That's why you came up on the screen? Theo has a question? Let me see his face. Let me see all that hair. Look at that hair.
Theo's pissed.
Why?
A little pissed.
Oh, all right. He'll get over it.
Hi, Theo.
Put him in the corner. Let him hang out with the dogs.
Hi.
He like it.
What is it? Say hi.
Okay, guys. There's
Thank
no
you.
question. We'll see you again. Same station, same place next week.
Bye, everybody. Have a beautiful week.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Bye, everybody. Thank you.